Hi, Karen.
Hey, Tony. I'm just mucking around here a second, trying to get something open.
Not a problem.
Then I'll start letting people in. Okay. Can you hear me now?
You want me to let people in?
grateful for that.
Good morning.
Good
How's
morning,
everybody?
everybody. Couldn't hear anything.
Karen, are we on?
Karen's
We
muted.
are on.
How are you guys?
It's like
Good
Patrick
morning.
ready to take a nap.
I'm gonna join him. Good morning, everybody. We want to go on and get started as much as we can. I'm looking at the participants. Let's see. Hello, Dr. Carter.
Hey, good morning, Ms. Smith. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm fine. I'm fine. Well, let me officially say good morning because we do want to get started. The agenda is packed from 9 to noon, and we're going to get in where we fit in because everything on the agenda is vital, and everything is in divine order. So we have to catch up and continue to be with our mission. We want to welcome everybody to our annual GAE-Retired Day at the Capitol via virtual. And we hope that the information that we have organized and provided will be a benefit to all. And we carry the message that, as usual, and in history, GAE is prepared and GAE-Retired is prepared to meet the task. So we'll have greetings from Tony Smith. Good morning, Tony, President of GAE-Retired, followed by Dr. Craig Carter, who is our GAE Executive Director. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome from me and GAE-Retired. I'd like to thank the Legislative Committee, the hard work of Linda Wolf-Smith, Judy Polachek, and Vivian Brooks for making this day a reality, and for the hard work of GAE-Retired Director Karen Solheim. We have a lot to talk about today. I'll be talking with you in a few minutes about Senate Bill 202. So I'd like to ask you to put on your thinking caps about how you can impact what happens in the legislative session this year. Dr. Carter.
Thank you, President Smith. Good morning, Retired. Good to see you all. I told Linda I wouldn't dare miss this, or Tony. I hope you're doing well, but I do bring greetings on behalf of our staff working diligently and hard. But I want to talk to you this morning about some really good news with GAE. GAE, I get to bring these greetings and continue to bring these greetings. And I know that President Morgan lifts these greetings up among our board of directors as well. As of today, the Georgia Association of Educators ranks in the top 6 of membership increases among all state affiliates. This is not some easy task, not to be noted. Matter of fact, it should be celebrated because it takes all of our members, our active locals and officers, our aspiring educators, and most importantly, our retired who work diligently, are retired, in fact, who have served in the trenches and know what our Georgia educators face each and every day. I'm most inspired by your work with our rapid response team and your motto of all hands on deck. That word in itself lends to my direction of the Georgia Association of Educators and our responsibility to our membership and our dues paying members to represent them in the highest light possible. Part of my strategic plan this past year is that GAE will advance public education profession from pre-K through higher education. I see this occurring each and every day and week as we continue to increase communication and public relations and lifting the stories of all of our educators across Georgia. We're working hard to continue to increase union participation, not just at one level, but all levels. Local, regional, state, and even national, to ensure broad engagement in the Georgia Association of Educators. And for the first time ever, GAE has been working hard to advance racial and social justice by continuing to improve educational opportunities for all Georgia students in respect to worth, dignity, and equality for each and every individual as we continue in a diverse and multicultural society. So Tony, thank you this morning. I enjoy being here And I appreciate all the work that you and our retired governance are doing weekly in your meetings. Even though I was at a national meeting last week, I heard about your meeting at headquarters in preparation for all that you all do. So thank you all so much for continuing to lift and amplify educator voice in Georgia. It's an exciting time for GAE. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that good news, Dr. Carter, and for being with us this morning. And I see that GAE President Lisa Morgan has joined us. Lisa?
Good morning,
Tony,
everyone. Good morning. I just want to say a quick hello. I am here with you today, but I'm doing double duty, monitoring the Rules Committee meeting this morning. And should they add that ugly voucher bill back to the agenda for the full house as they did yesterday, I'll be on my way out the door back to the Capitol, but I'm here with you now. Great to see all your smiling faces, and let's have a good day and do something positive for public education.
thank you, President Morgan. Today's agenda is, when they say approve with flexibility, it will be very flexible today. We took into account that the legislators that we have invited are very, 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 very busy. We can't speak of any time, I know in my adult history, that urgency is on the front burner. And as we have invited legislators, and when they come, those on the program, if you would just politely know that we may ask you to pause for a minute so that our legislators can bring greetings. Also, we've informed the president of GAE-Retired, Sarah Borgman, and Todd to come by for just a minute maybe to say hello and to greet us. But before I begin, I do want to thank the two members that I have for the Retired Legislative Committee, Vivian. I know they've been thanked by the president, but you cannot replace people who are there and are sincere about what they do. I also want to greet and thank you, Dr. Carter, for your energy. When you're not around, I know you're busy. So that's a good thing for all of us to know. And welcome everyone. Karen is a co-host, and she's going to let us know. She'll let us know, and it's okay because Karen can politely chime in and let us know when a legislator arrives. And we have that pegged for 9:04 to 9:34, keeping with the agenda. So at this time, if any of the legislators are in, Karen, would you let us know?
They are not at this point, but we do have Todd Crenshaw having joined us.
Okay, Todd, you're on.
Good morning, GAE-Retired, Dr. Carter and Ms. Morgan, President. It is so much a thrill to see a complete team on here, and from local, state to national support. I wanted to just show up today just to let you know how we feel at NEA. Dr. Carter, you mentioned that last week you heard about this project because we've been touting it here at NEA as one of our flagship programs. And the team there in Georgia has just done outstanding work, and we're so proud of that work, and we will continue to support it, to hold it up as an example of how the state, the local, and the national can work together to do successful programs with our retirees that help support our actives, as well as help engage our retired members all over that state. So I just wanted to lend my support to the team this morning to say what you're doing is just great. We appreciate it, and keep up the good work, Linda, and your team. And one last little pet peeve of mine, the rapid response team is one of my babies, and I'm so happy to see it expanded to Georgia. When I created it 12 years ago, but 12 years ago at NEA, I had no idea that it would flourish throughout the nation, and it is in Arizona and Georgia and other states now taking hold. So thank you so much for the work that you're doing down there.
And thank you, Todd. You know, the old saying, if you build it, they will come. But you got to have the right mix or it won't work. And we have a great, great team led by Tony. Can't say enough about Karen and the executive board. We go along and we get along. And that means that when it comes to humans. So everything is real good. So thank you so much, Todd. Tony has to leave on a family emergency. So we're going to ask her to come on up next so that she can be by the side of her mother. Tony?
Good morning, everyone. I'm back again, and I want to talk to you a little bit about the impact and the importance of Senate Bill 202. It's a piece of legislation that passed in the last General Assembly, and it has a tremendous impact on voting here in the state of Georgia. The 11 Alive analysis tells us that Senate Bill 202 requires an ID number like a driver's license to apply for an absentee ballot. We don't have to include a copy of our ID, but we do have to put the state-approved ID number on the absentee ballot request, and it cuts off absentee ballot applications 11 days before the election, limits the number of absentee ballot drop boxes severely, allows the state to take control of what it calls underperforming local election systems. So there's a challenge process in place that can be anonymous if the legislature determines that a local elections board is underperforming, and right now they're targeting Fulton County, they can take over that election board and put their own people in. It disallows voters giving away food and drink to voters waiting in lines, and we found out that's a retroactive rule. They're right now trying to prosecute people who quote, violated that rule in previous election. It revises the time for advanced voting and lets election officials begin scanning verified ballots on the third Monday before election day, so that there won't be such a delay in getting the count from absentee ballots. It requires 2 Saturday voting days and makes 2 Sunday voting days optional, revises the time for runoffs to be held on the 28th day after the general or special primary election. So that's not a lot of time for candidates to work. It takes the Secretary of State away as the chair of the State Elections Board, and the Secretary of State is no longer a voting member of the Elections Board. That's a direct swipe at Raffensperger. And the voter ID requirement for absentee ballots has changed, as I said. Also, groups cannot publish absentee ballot request forms in their organs, and they cannot offer absentee ballot request forms to potential voters. There can be unlimited challenges for voter eligibility from anyone or any organization. We know that there were challenges from a group in Texas last year to voters here in Georgia, and this law codifies that anyone or any organization can challenge as many voters as they want to. We know that the drop boxes have all but been eliminated, and they are no longer outside. They have to be inside the Board of Elections, and they have to be monitored by a person rather than a camera. Elimination of mobile voting, which was a very big deal in some rural and urban areas where voters find it difficult to get to the precincts. The food and water restrictions, as we said, provisional ballots will be disqualified at the end of the voting day, and the General Assembly can disqualify votes cast by an entire precinct if they decide they're questionable. The use it or lose it law has been beefed up, so voters can be purged from the voting rolls, and voting hours are much more difficult to extend if there are problems in the voting precincts. The judge can no longer say, all right, well, we'll keep the polls open until 9 o'clock. If the machines go down, the voting precincts can only be, hours can only be extended for the amount of time that the machines were down. The Attorney General takes over investigations instead of the Secretary of State's office. So now it's a criminal process. Law enforcement hotline has been established, and anonymous complaints of voter irregularities can be made. People making complaints no longer have to identify themselves or their organization. Again, I talked about the possible takeover of election boards. This law is to ensure the legality, and this word troubles me, purity of elections, the purity of elections. Our chief counsel, Michael McGonigal, says that there's only one way to interpret that, and that is racial purity. Senate Bill 202, according to Chief Counsel Mike McGonigal, and this is why GAE cares, it's an assault on public education because public education has to produce citizens who make informed political decisions. Our merger created an association that believes in equity and equality. Our history is present, because this association was founded on the shared beliefs that all people are created equal. The history of voting rights is fraught with overt racial structures. Georgia expelled Black legislators who were elected after Black men were given the right to vote. The law was interpreted that Black men could vote but could not be elected to public office. And Georgia was the first state to enact a poll tax that was not eliminated until 1945. And when we look at the ID requirements, you'll see that we have a quasi-poll tax in place now. As I said, Georgia expelled the Black legislator who were elected after Black men were given the right to vote, and not a single Black person served in the General Assembly in Georgia from 1908 to 1962. The Voting Rights Act of 1965 and 1968, there was Section 5, the pre-clearance provision, that said that any state in a designated area, primarily the Confederate States, had to pre-clear any changes they made in their voting laws, regulations, or procedures. And Georgia consistently challenged those voting rights. We know that in 2013, the Supreme Court nullified the pre-clearance section, and that opened the door for voting suppression laws around the country, and they have been fast and furious. And then the 2021 Supreme Court decision nullified, allowed state to nullify the provisional ballots at the end of the voting day. They said that that in fact was constitutional. So what can we do? The first thing we can do is to check our voter registration, and we can do that by going to the My Voter page site of the Secretary of State's office. I'll put that URL in the chat at the end of this presentation, or perhaps Karen or Linda can put that in the chat now, and know what the requirements are. So what IDs are acceptable? A Georgia's driver's license, even if it's expired, a valid employee photo ID from any branch, department, agency, or entity of the United States government, Georgia, or any county, municipality, board, authority, or other entity of the state, a valid US passport, and we know that there is a very prohibitive cost for a passport, a valid military photo ID, a valid tribal ID. So those are the only acceptable forms of identification for voting. And we know that there is a cost involved in securing some of these IDs. For example, to get a Georgia voter card, you have to have documentation of your birth date. So that's a birth certificate, and there is a cost involved in all counties to receive a birth certificate. It can be a photo identity document or approved non-photo identity document that includes the full legal name and date of birth, evidence that the applicant is a registered voter, so that would be that precinct card that you get in the mail, or the evidence from my voter page, documentation showing the applicant's name and residential address, like a utility bill in that person's name. But not every voter has something in their own name that comes to their address. You need to know the requirements to vote in Georgia, what the acceptable IDs are, and the absentee ballot requirements. To request an absentee ballot, you have to include the number only from your acceptable form of identification. You do not have to make a copy of the ID itself. And you also need to know the restrictions on drop boxes. Now, drop boxes are inside the voter offices, and they are monitored by a person, not a camera. My voter page, www.mpv for my voter page.sos for Secretary of State.ga.gov is where you can register to vote, check your voter registration, check to see if your precinct has moved, check to see who your elected officials are. If you've been redistricted, it is a gold mine of information. And so I want you to write that address down, capture it from the chat, www.mpv.sos.ga.gov. And what else can we do? Provide rides to the drop boxes or to the polls. Remember this, never vote alone, never vote alone. And when we vote, we need to vote for pro-democracy and pro-education candidates. These voter suppression steps were put in place by people who do not value the democratic process, in my opinion. And so I ask you to consider whether or not you feel that they have your best interest at heart. So with that, that is the impact of Senate Bill 202 that was passed in the last General Assembly. Are there any questions?
For the interest of time, what I want to say, Tony, you gave us more than a mouthful. And I'm so happy that Craig, not Craig, but Todd is here as representing the NEA, because as the director for the retired, I'm sure he hears it everywhere, but there's nothing like this work that they call work is done in Georgia. And it's Jim Crow on steroids. But thanks to NEA Retired, we have received a grant. And that grant has enabled us to start our advocacy as of August. And I want everyone to know that thanks to Gloria Jenkins, I hope she'll come on later, that we've addressed a lot of that information that you have given them, Tony, and I'm so glad that you did, is because we've got to protect and put our arms around other seniors, because this is just not an ordinary task. And I really, really thank you for this thorough report. And we're going to need you as we move forward during the elections of 2022 to let seniors know everywhere that we can let them know that we're there to help. We have the information to help them get to the polls. And that's our main goal. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you for that thorough report.
You're very welcome, Linda, and thank you all for being with us today. And thank you, Linda, Vivian, and Judy, for the hard work you're doing to make sure that voter education takes place.
Thank you, Tony, and well wishes for your mom, and be safe on the road.
Thank you.
Karen, do we have any visitors?
At this point, we do not, Miss Linda.
Okay, it's on you. We're going to go on to Sandra Hawthorne. Are you there? And Sandra had trouble logging on, but she is coming. What about Ms. Margaret?
Sandra is with us.
Okay, I'm Speedy. Sorry about that. Sandra, you're next. Sandra is also a member of our GAE Board of Directors representing retired. Thank you, Sandra.
Sandra, you may be muted if you're speaking into the universe.
Let me text her. Sandra, are you there?
I can do that, Linda, if you want to move the agenda.
Okay, what I want to do is Lisa, because Lisa is so versatile. She knows how to stop, start, and you find her over there in another seat. So Lisa, if you would just get started for us. And I've looked at your title and it says GAE Vision Fulfilled. And I'm saying that because Lisa was our vision when she was a baby in high school or maybe college. And I so much respect the way she has grown through the process to become president of GAE. So I'm not saying your work is done by saying fulfilled, but our vision, as you raise them, they will grow to do the right thing, Lisa, is our testimony. So that also means that you can come, as they say in old church, come in your own way as you bring us up to speed, I guess, if we can do that in a short amount of time with what's going on with you and with GAE. Lisa?
Yes, ma'am. I had to jump back.
I told you.
So rules is over. So first I want to talk about how excited I am, obviously, about our membership growth, but also the engagement from our members. We when we send out an action alert now, we have doubled the participation that we were seeing previously. 2 years ago, when we asked our members to respond, the majority of those who responded, it was about pay. And of course, we know pay is important to everybody. But now we're getting that same response rate about other issues. Right now, if you have not already done so, please send your representatives the message to vote no on House Bill 60, the voucher bill. And I'll put that in the chat, the link where everyone can do that. I'm also excited about the work that is happening to live out our values, as Mike says. And so I want to tell y'all something that's coming up that I'm very excited about. We have been working with the other states in the Southeast over the past year now. And we've been meeting once a month with a group of our diversity inclusion chair from Georgia has been participating, and staff, and I've been participating. So we have written an NEA grant that we hope we will be funded very soon to have a racial and social justice conference for the Southeast. And then what we were planning to do from that is then after that conference in May, then the states will continue to work together, and we will have a racial and social justice focused meeting of some sort, a workshop, a training, an action in each state in the Southeast, and we will participate together. And so after the conference, which is going to be May 21st and 22nd in Memphis, Georgia will be one of the first states to do the next piece. And so I'm very excited about that we are able to work with the Southeast so we can begin to show our racial and social justice history. That's one of the things that the board committed ourselves to doing this year, is reading about our history and about who we were before the merger, and that we need to continue that history moving forward.
Lisa, before you go through and move on to, I can tell you we're at the end of that thought. We do have Representative B. Wynn with us, and as Linda mentioned at the onset, we want to honor our
Yes.
legislators' time. So if you can hold your next thought, and Linda, if you'll want to ask Representative Wynn to share greetings.
Good morning, it's B. We met B 2 or 3 years ago as we was doing our tour of the Capitol, and we had to run to keep up with her. She's been a dynamic force in the legislature, and she's now running for Secretary of State, if I could say that, not endorsing, however, but she's a dynamic person. B, if you greet us, please. Thank you so much.
Good morning, everyone, and great to see you, Miss Linda Smith. I am very sorry that we cannot do this in person. The pandemic has really changed the way in which we have been operating, but I tell you, the day y'all came to the Capitol was just a super fun day to be with you and hear from you, and also to allowed me to just show you some of the inner workings of that place, which is supposed to be the people's house. It doesn't always feel like the people's house. But I want to thank everyone here this morning. I am a current state lawmaker here in Georgia. I represent House District 89 and was elected in 2017. And I tell you, one of the reasons I ran in the first place was because prior to being elected, I spent 10 years working in DeKalb and Atlanta public schools through a nonprofit I started to provide after-school programming and wraparound services to young women in our public school systems. And like you all know, educators have to take on multiple roles for our young people in our public school systems. And it was the educators who stayed with me after school and gave up their own personal time to allow us to create programming for the young students in the classroom. And it was also the educators who understood that sometimes y'all have to pivot from what is going on to address other needs in the classroom and in the communities in which you teach and in which you serve. So thank you so much for your service. And y'all also know that Georgia is an incredibly challenging state when it comes to supporting our public school systems. And part of that is the continued decisions to underfund our public education budget. We have only fully funded our QBE formula a few times in the last decade or so. I think in the past 11 of 14 years, we have not fully funded our QBE formula. In addition to that, we also know that we have not provided enough support services for our education formula, our transportation formula, our school counselors, our school nurses, and obviously not supporting our educators in the way in which we should. Right now, we are facing all of those things, but you all know on top of that, this concerted effort that is happening here in Georgia and across our country to censor what is being taught in the classroom. It is intended to create a chilling effect. It is an attempt to whitewash our history, and it is an attempt to cause our children to not be able to have a whole and honest education. And some of the legislation that has been proposed is extremely punitive in nature. It allows any educator who is found in violation of these laws to be sued by multiple folks. They can be sued by a parent, by a teacher, by a student of age, by the attorney general. These are all tactics to create a classroom environment that is not safe for educators and not safe for students. And one of the things that is probably, most disappointing is the entire narrative around this. Folks are on the other side of the aisle who are attempting to pass legislation such as this. They're not considering the implications on our school children. I had a chance to meet with students from APS from different high schools throughout Atlanta public school systems and explain to them the bills that are on the table. And they said to me, "Is this a joke? this seems like a joke. And they followed up and said, we are scared. It is important for us to have a truthful and honest and whole history. It is important to us as young people of color in the South to understand our roots so that we can feel empowered to say, we are not going to let history repeat itself. We are going to be advocates for ourselves, for our community, for our family members. We know that it is very likely some form of these bills are going to pass. In addition to that, we're facing potential bills that would censor materials that Republicans consider to be obscene. We are also looking at a number of bills that would prohibit transgender girls from playing sports in public schools. So it is an attack on our public institution, an attack on students, an attack on educators, and we really, really have to ensure that y'all are not the only ones carrying and shouldering this burden in the fight to protect the public education system and to protect our educators and to protect our children. So I am here if anyone has any questions. I will be working very closely with Ms. Lisa Morgan and other members of GAE to push back against what we are seeing. And then I'm sure a part of that conversation will be also this move to divert funding for public schools over to private school vouchers. So it is in all areas, and there are no conversations around what it is that our public education system actually needs in order to thrive, in order for our students to thrive, in order for us to retain teachers in the state of Georgia and attract teachers in the state of Georgia. But I am committed to being in this fight with you all. And thank you so much. And we'll take any questions if anyone has any.
Thank you, B. I really don't want to open it for questions. It's not that none are not invited, but the program is so packed today. But we know that we can put our hands on you when we need you. And that's more important than gold. We want to thank you for everything you've done for education and for the community. You are my rep and you served me very proud. Any comments from Lisa or Tony?
Lisa, you're on mute.
I always do that. Representative Brown, I just want to thank you for being here with us this morning. Thank you for working so hard on behalf of public education at the Capitol. You're always a voice speaking up for our students and educators, and we truly do appreciate that.
Thank you all. And then I'll just drop my information in the chat if anyone needs to follow up or connect with me later. But thank you for allowing me to come on and share a few moments of my morning with y'all.
Thank you so much, B. While she's on, I want to go back a minute to Tony's presentation because she mentioned helping seniors. And Ms. Gloria Jenkins, who has been a fireball for GAE-Retired, and the grant that we received from NEA, thank you, Todd, for your vision, because of that grant, we've been able to create a program, Seniors Reaching Seniors, where we have, I think with the trial runs we had, sort of about 7 or 8, now we are able to have a roadmap as to how to get to senior facilities, to get to those seniors who maybe have not changed their addresses, who have not really registered because some of them are now citizens, that we've been able to develop a way where we can continue that work, which is why we do need all hands on deck. At this time, Karen, has any other legislators shown up?
No, ma'am.
What about?
But we're ready to go back, I think, to Lisa, and then I think Sandra is ready after Lisa finishes.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Lisa, part 2.
Okay, so part 2, I want to talk about the legislative contact team and the work we are doing there. And I want to thank Linda and the rapid response team, because I think we've been able to merge the two groups and have us working together to contact legislators. To what we want to have happen is, and then we're going to have to build toward this, I want every legislator at the Capitol to have a GAE member in their phone. And when a bill comes up about public education or a bill comes up that could impact public education, that legislator knows who to call. And they know that that GAE member is their person who's going to know how it's going to impact public education and is going to be able to tell them what the true impact will be. Because so many times legislators bring bills, and I'll give them the benefit of the doubt that they have the best of intentions. But then when those bills get to the reality of our classrooms, once it's trickled through all the various levels it has to trickle through to get to the classroom, what's happening has actually changed. And so we want that educator voice to be there and for all our legislators to hear that. So thank you for those who have participated. And we will be again this Thursday having a work session where we will be lobbying legislators again. As Representative Wynn said, if it can hurt public education, somebody has a bill this time. We have 5 total of the bills that would limit our ability to teach a full and accurate history of our state and country. We have 2 voucher bills. We have 2 so-called parental bill of rights bills. And then so far we've seen 2, quote, anti-obscenity bills. So we are being very careful about these bills. The governor in his State of the State indicated that he would support some of these bills. So we are, for example, everybody heard about House Bill 888, which was the first of the anti-honesty bills to drop. And everybody jumped on, we want to talk about HB 888, HB 888. HB 888 was dropped first by the sponsors to get the publicity because they knew it would happen. House Bill 888 is probably not going anywhere. House Bill 1084, which has many of the exact same provisions, is probably the bill that they are going to move forward. That bill has Will Wade on the Education Committee and Representative Jan Jones, who is second in the House. So that when we look at who the sponsors are on that bill, that's the bill the governor supports. So that's the one that they will be moving forward. The bills in the Senate, Senate Bill 377, which was heard yesterday, is the bill that we believe will be moving forward. So you're not going to hear me talking about 888. It's wrong, it's bad, but it was basically dead in the water when the governor's supported bill was introduced. So that's where we are with those. The voucher bills are both by Representative Wes Cantrell, and those are the immediate issue. House Bill 60, you all will remember last year, it went to rules and was sent to the House floor 3 times and was sent back to rules 3 times because they did not have the votes to pass it. So then Representative Cantrell introduced House Bill 999. So House Bill 60 is eligible to go to the floor. It has passed out of the Education Committee. We anticipate they will meet with House Bill 999 Wednesday. And Mr. Cantrell said in the meeting that he will not ask them to take both to the floor. So if both are voted out of the education committee, they will only try to pass one of the two on the floor, which to me means he knows 999 is not going nowhere. And he's trying to get 60 passed by saying, okay, let me show you what I could do to make it 10 times worse. So maybe you'll accept House Bill 60, and we are not going to do that. We are going to continue to fight because our public funds should be for public education. The other thing that's bubbling up, let me give you the latest this morning. And we can expect this to be a legislative issue as well. The governor tweeted yesterday that he is going to seek legislative action because we still have school systems where our administrations are following the CDC guidelines and requiring everyone in the buildings to wear masks. And so there have already been a couple of bills that have been introduced that would not allow our schools to do the right thing to keep our students and educators safe. So the governor is going to wade into that and support some measure. There have been several measures that would eliminate the ability of the school systems to require masks, as well as eliminate their ability to require vaccinations. And one of those bills actually would apply to all vaccinations. So school systems would no longer be able to require children to have any vaccination to attend school.
Oh my God.
Yes.
Thank you, Lisa. Later on in the program today, we have the Government Relations Director, Joe Fleming, and lobbyist, Grace, who will give us a more in-depth report of what he has experienced in this short time at the legislature. But thank you, Lisa, and Godspeed, and take care of yourself and stay the course. Sandra, are you ready?
Good morning, everyone. We're going to take a short tour around the Capitol to see what's going on, what buildings are there. And I'm going to share. Okay, can everybody see anything?
I see Lake.
Oh dear.
Make me want to go
Okay, I
fishing.
thought I had it open. Wait a minute.
Something's happening.
Okay. Karen, do you have that PowerPoint?
Yes.
I thought I have it open, but I don't.
Here we go.
Okay, let's see, can we make it? All right, some of the buildings around the state capitol, and we're going to start with the James H. Sloppy Forward building. And some of you may realize that we have a government building named Sloppy, and it's a story behind that name. James Sloppy Forward. James Floyd was from Chattooga County. And when he was playing football, he was so thin, his jersey just flopped on him. So he got the nickname of Sloppy, James Sloppy, and it is on his tombstone, James H. Sloppy Floyd. Okay, the James Sloppy Floyd building is also known as the Twin Towers. And in the Twin Towers, you have the Empire Room and you have the Floyd Room. And these rooms are for large groups that have your audio and visual connectivity needs. Going on, you also have some of the offices that are in the Twin Towers. And thousands of Georgians that work for the state of Georgia are in this building, located in this building. The state health plan, Georgia State Department of Public Safety, Georgia Department of Audits, even the Georgia Standard Science Frameworks is located in this building. If we move on, we'll go to the Paul Coverdale building. And in the Paul Coverdale building, this is where you have your Atlanta delegation offices. You have Atlanta Fulton, you have Fulton County, and you have Atlanta. Everyone that's affiliated, that's a delegate that's in Atlanta, they're located in this building. You also have the House Budget and Research offices in this building. And you have the Georgia Building Authority located in this building. That's what the Paul Coverdale building looks like. Next, we have our state capitol. On the second floor is the office of the governor. I think there's a picture of that, right? Also located on the second floor is the office of the lieutenant governor and the secretary of state. If you move up to the third floor, this is your General Assembly, and they meet from January to April. And on the fourth floor, you have the House and Senate galleries. You also have visitors galleries and museums. And that's a short trip to look at our buildings around the state capitol. And I hope you learned just a little bit this morning. Thank you very much. I didn't want to do more than my minutes, Miss Linda.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Just let you know, Sandra, you're always thorough, and we know you do stay within the minutes. Thank you so much. Sandra has also invited Miss Margaret Jenkins, the Muskogee County Board of Elections Director, and she is a little bit under the weather. And she says she may or may not come, so we'll be on the lookout for her. But if not, you tell her to get well and to stay well. We need her in that position. You've told me that she's 90 years old. So talk about longevity and service to community. Thank you so much, Sandra. Next will be Joe Fleming. But before Joe, we want to give Miss Gloria Jenkins just 1 minute to say hello. This is the young lady who has created and sponsored the Senior Coalition Caucus, where the project Seniors Helping Seniors did evolve. Miss Gloria.
Good morning, everyone. And Linda, thank you so much for inviting me to join this wonderful group. As you know, I am a retired educator, so I feel right at home. I'm a member of this organization and I'm working right with you. But I have enjoyed working with Linda and Seniors Reaching Seniors. We've covered a lot of territory, and I was late getting on this morning because I was trying to set up some additional spots for us to go to help seniors be where they need to be in terms of their voting abilities and capabilities for this election cycle. If you'd like to join us, just let Linda know. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Gloria. As we say, whenever we have Lobby and Learn or any of our trainings, the tour of the Capitol, once you sign on, you're on. It's a marvelous thing to work with Miss Gloria. Judy Polachek joined us in Scottsdale, in DeKalb County, and she was a great help, and others will come aboard because there's much work to do. Thank you so much, Miss Gloria. Karen, has any other legislators showed up yet?
No, ma'am, not yet.
Okay, Joe Fleming, our Government Relations Director, you're on.
Thank you, Linda. Appreciate it. Lisa did a great job of explaining the things that we're tracking and following and trying to influence at the Capitol this year. One of the big bills yesterday that consumed most of our attention was what they're calling bills on divisive concepts. And this includes prohibitions on teachers and school districts using curriculum or lesson plans or material that, for example, claims that the United States is a racist nation or Georgia's a racist nation. These are really troubling bills in a lot of ways. They're going to have a chilling effect on educators. But as important, some of these bills put our educators in real harm's way. They allow for charges, for example, to be filed by district attorney, excuse me, by the Attorney General. In the case of SB 377, which was heard in committee yesterday, the actual committee, the Senate Education Committee or the House Education Committee, can bring charges. And when we're talking about district attorneys, we're talking about men and women whose lives are in dealing with criminal activity. Criminal activity carries often penalties of jail time, of financial penalties, can certainly lead to the loss of certification or disciplinary action by the professional standards groups. Some of these bills have contemplated 20% cuts in state funding to school districts. They're a real mess. But this is one of the issues du jour for the Republican Party this session. And we aim to fight them with everything we have. But there are a number of these bills. I think we'll hear another one. I think Lisa said this in the House side this coming week. But these are bills that initially started off as attacking the critical race theory idea, but now have morphed into just a real whitewash of American history. I suppose they could bleed over into journalism classes or literature classes, any number of ways, but they're troubling. They're very, very troubling. Some of these bills have morphed into parental complaint bills, which establish new procedures for parents to complain about their child's education. We've seen this happen already in other states where parents have filed complaints against biographies on Martin Luther King Jr. And a host of other topics. So they're playing with fire here, and it's at the forefront of our agenda this session. Lisa mentioned vouchers. We get up every morning and are checking the Rules Committee to see if they've calendared HB 60. It did pass out of committee, which it did last year, but as Lisa pointed out, they never had the votes for it. And we're working hard to make sure that's the case again this year. So you may get a phone call from GAE asking you if you'd like to be connected to your legislator. I hope you will accept that and tell them the problems with these voucher bills. State money shouldn't be used to pay for private school tuition. They're no benefit to many students in Georgia. And if you look at the last several daily legislative reports we've put out there, outline some strong cases against vouchers. So we'll be watching that process very closely. We're engaged in it. But the reason that HB 60 didn't pass last year is because of our members. Our members responded to our calls of action, contacted their legislator, and it was overwhelming for them. And I think we helped them to begin to see the light on vouchers. One other thing about HB 60 is they literally just passed another voucher bill 6 months ago, or which became effective 6 months ago. And yet they're passing a bill that in many ways is identical to what was passed last year, which was Senate Bill 47. We do have separate parental rights bills. They also, some of them include penalties. They also, some of them expose educators to legal action. So we're watching those. There's one that passed the Senate last year, SB 226, that was heard in House committee. I haven't heard much from that lately. So it could be that some of the newer bills that have been filed are going to take the place of that bill. On the budget, we haven't talked much about that on this call. Just to refresh your memory, every year the governor is constitutionally required to submit 2 budgets to the legislature. One includes any adjustments to the current year budget. Often changes are made because of changes in tax revenue. Georgia is bringing in record revenues now, and there's more money to spend. The governor also produces a budget for the next fiscal year. So let's talk about what's in the mid-year adjustment. This is going to be where you find bonuses for educators. They're contemplating a $2,000 one-time supplement for full-time educators and $1,000 for part-time educators. I think that's likely to pass. We do have concerns with it that we're continuing to press to make sure as many of our members are covered as possible. In the next year's school budget or state budget, which begins July 1st, that's where you'll find the teacher pay raise of $2,000. You may remember the governor promised when he first ran a $5,000 increase for educators, changes permanently made to the salary schedule. That is in this budget for the next fiscal year. The governor's also proposed full funding for QBE, both in the mid-year adjustments and in the next year budget. This means eliminating the cuts that were made or proposed for public education through the QBE formula. At one point, the General Assembly had passed 2 straight budgets that cut $800 million from public education. As B. Gwynn said, they've only fully funded QBE twice in the last 20 years. So while it's nice that the QBE is fully funded, that is a basic level of funding. It provides for no exceptionality. It's just their basic obligation to meet their constitutional responsibility. The cuts over the years have hurt. They continue to still hurt. But it is worth noting that QBE is fully funded for the remainder of this school year and next year. As far as retirement bills go, good news is a fairly light year for major retirement bills. You probably know that in Georgia, if there's a fiscal consequence to a retirement bill, it becomes a 2-year bill, meaning that it's filed in the first year of a 2-year session and completed in the second year. We have one bill basically that's moving, and that's HB 385. This is the bill that allows retired educators to return to the classroom full-time while drawing their teacher retirement system benefits. The bill was amended in committee in a way that we think is unfavorable, in that it limits the usage of this ability to return full-time only to educators with 30 years of service. So they've shrunk the pool substantially, despite the fact that this bill was offered as part of a solution to the teacher shortage we're facing in Georgia. So when we get to the Senate and the Senate Education Committee, we'll be working hard to eliminate that 30-year requirement. Lisa's pointed out several times you could have individuals who worked in the private sector for 15 years, taught for 15 years, would be valuable resources in a subject matter that a school district is having a difficulty in placing educators. But unless they had 30 years under the current version, they cannot be funded through this bill. So if we're going to address the teacher shortage, it needs to be with bigger picture items than with what this has become. We are following also closely legislation and regulatory action on state health benefit plans. It's our understanding that there's a possibility that later this year or early next year, insurers will be asked to respond to a request for proposals on becoming the insurer for the state benefit plan. There's a bill up this week in committee by Representative Eric Allen of Cobb County that would drop insurers from the plan who, without cause, fail to renew a contract with an existing provider. Northside Hospital is a good example of this. So we're knee deep involved in that. Want to mention, of course, the GAE Day at the Capitol on February 24th. We'll start at 8 a.m. We are going to be in person for those that would like to come, but we're also planning to live stream the event as well. We have confirmation from Superintendent Woods that he'll be there. We have invited the governor again, and we've invited the chairman of the education committees and the retirement committees and a handful of other key players that we deal with and that are critical to us in our success at the state capitol. Lastly, I want to mention campaigns and elections. It's a huge year for Georgia. All statewide races are up, everything from governor to commissioner of insurance to agricultural commissioner. Of course, Senator Warnock is up for election. He's running for his first full 6-year term. If you remember, he was elected to fill the unexpired term of the late Johnny Isaacson. So a lot of things on the ballot there, but also every legislative seat is up in Georgia every 2 years. So they'll all be running in newly drawn districts. GAE is planning to be very aggressive this year in fighting for candidates who are friends of education and working to defeat those candidates who are not standing with us on some of these critical issues this year. Qualifying for candidates is March 7 through 11. So that's coming up pretty quickly. I think our PAC committee is looking at revising our questionnaire that we send to all candidates. And I think they'll probably look at statewide races first and then the legislative races. Primary is in May. If there's a runoff, it'll be in June. So this is going to be a critical year for us. We've got to stand up for those who stand up for us, and we need to work to make changes for those who just don't get it or refuse to get it. Linda, I'm happy to take any questions on any issue that those on the call might have.
Okay, we do have a little time. Any questions for Joe? You can raise your hand. Great.
I have
Lisa,
a question.
Okay, Dan.
I don't know if it's so much to Joe, but maybe he knows something. With all this crazy legislation that's coming out, and to me, it's clearly some of it's just beyond the Constitution by a long shot. Are we joining in any other groups with legal means? I mean, filing suit against, for example, Senate Bill 202, the one from last year, or earlier this year that was, or no, last year that was passed, and these ridiculous let's not teach history bills.
Right.
It just seems to me there's clear constitutional violations, and we should be a part of addressing those issues in court.
Yeah, I know Mike is aware of those lawsuits, but he would be the best one to answer the question about litigation. We work regularly with coalitions at the state capitol, civil rights groups, at other education groups. You really can't have a winning coalition at the capitol without involving a coalition of like-minded parties. But on legal action, Mike would be the one to answer that.
Well, I realize that, but I thought maybe you had some information. It just seems to me we ought to have at least an amicus brief that's going along with these other people that are bound to sue. I mean, this is
and Dan, you've got
anything I can imagine.
Yeah, and you've got lawsuits underway now on SB 202, the Republican voting law from last year. You've got litigation over redistricted maps. So there are plenty of opportunities there. I'll be sure to relay your question to Mike and have him get back to the group. That'd be
Lisa,
great.
you ready? Lisa, you ready for part 3? Thank you, Joe, for that information. And I know it's evolving every day. And we're just happy to have someone like you on point to represent us. Lisa, about coalitions or people that we're working with to join us in
Okay.
quelling this.
So, as Joe said, we're working with the public education coalitions each and every day. And to Dan's question, Mike would be the person. I know that, we are involved, and basically our, if it's primarily education, then we take the lead. If it's not primarily education, then we let those who it is their area of expertise take the lead. One other thing I'll just to let you know, Joe shared this with me yesterday evening, but a reporter had already shared this with me. We are probably going to see once again, and I'm afraid this is going to be at our school boards. The governor tweeted last night that the school districts that are doing the right thing and requiring our students to wear masks, according to the governor, they're not following the science. And yeah, so I will be speaking out on that, and that we are continuing to ask all our school systems to follow the guidelines from the Centers for Disease Control, because they are the experts in public health. So the governor is joining that group. And I think what I'm going to say today, I'm getting ready to print the rules for the House at the state capitol, clearly state that every person within the confines of the House must wear a mask. So our students should be as safe in their schools as our legislators are in the state capitol. So that's where we are. Patrick, I know that there have been challenges to the redistricting maps in Georgia. What I think is going to be the big challenges now are going to be the local maps. If you have been paying attention, Gwinnett County and Cobb County delegations both worked with their communities and presented maps. And then individual legislators from those counties went outside the normal process and presented their own maps, which have then been passed by the majority. So it's once again going to be, I think the focus here in Georgia obviously is going to be on the congressional map, but then also on these counties, because in Gwinnett County, where I live, the county is majority minority, and the maps that were drawn by the commissioners and the delegation did not have large changes to the lines. So it was small adjustments. The map that was put forth by the individual drew a majority white district in North Gwinnett, which is going to be a problem for a lot of, even legislators are now saying, whoa, we didn't think about this. People who were in one district and are moving to another district, in some cases, it will be 6 years between the time that they were able to vote for their commissioners. Because For example, one community in, I think it's Berkeley Lake, voted for their county commissioner in 2018. If they stay in the same district, they will vote for their commissioner this year in 2022. But they have been moved to a new district, and the commissioner for that district was elected in 2020. So if they are moved, they will not vote again until 2024. So they voted in 2018, they won't vote for their representative on the commission again until 2024. And that's going to be an issue. And those kinds of things were considered by the delegations who were trying to draw fair maps and listen to the input from the community, but not those at the Capitol who said a few minutes ago, they're all for local control until those local leaders don't do what they want them to do, and then they don't favor local control anymore. I do want to take just a couple of minutes to talk about what we're doing in GAE. We are planning to have, as Joe said, GAE Day at the Capitol. We are planning for our spring representative assembly to be in person. And we are working with the site to do everything to make it as safe as possible. And I will be asking the board at our March 4th and 5th meeting we will be discussing the protocols for masks, etc., for our in-person events. NEA has released their COVID protocols for all in-person events. And so for those of you who were considering attending something in person for NEA, please make sure you read. Anytime you register, it asks you to read and sign that you're going to follow the COVID protocols. Very hopeful that we will be able to, we will have the RA in person and that we will be able to have a full RA. However, I think we will be having open hearings in a virtual setting because we would like to allow members and delegates to get their questions answered and get the information prior to arriving for the RA. It's a whole lot easier to ask a question, and if we need to get back to you, we can do that if it's 2 weeks before the RA. If it's Saturday morning and you have a question, then sometimes you might not get your answer when you need it in a timely manner. The other thing with that, to let you all know, March 11th and 12th, the GAE Resolutions Committee is meeting, and they have specifically asked that if anyone has suggested amendments or new resolutions, that you email them to the chair of resolutions by the week before. And that information is in your most recent e-newsletter, and it will be in the next one as well. And I think that's everything on my list, unless y'all want me to get another list out.
No, we are right on time.
Okay.
Patrick, you did have your hand up. It was not an oversight. I just didn't see it. Did Lisa answer your question? You're muted.
Can I just say thank you?
Yes. Lisa, Dan, you heard Dan's thank you.
Yes, I did. And I want to thank all of you for all you do for GAE. I know you are the faces on the front lines when we are all in the classrooms And I truly appreciate that from all of you. And I appreciate you being involved and helping those of us who have come following you know how to do the work.
Thank you, Lisa. Karen just placed in the chat that the most recent, which came out yesterday, I think, we'll have the information about resolutions and about 20 other events that we have. The in the loop, I'm sorry, in the loop is very informative. And I ask you that once you log on to get out your calendar so that you can write down dates, because you know we don't remember much these days, and also register at that time so you won't have to go back and register. That will help Karen and Tony greatly as they organize a lot of most of these events. Thank you so much, Lisa. Next, and we are in good time. I'm sure that the information that Tony gave and that Joe gave and Lisa would infuriate you to really get involved, but we want you to be courteous. And that's where our next presenter, Karen Solheim, will help me again with the 5 C's of lobbying. And after Karen, we'll hear from Debbie Simons, and I'll introduce her at that time. Thank you. Karen?
Thank you, Linda. And I'm going to just reiterate, because I think people need to hear things 28 times, maybe 23, that if you don't know who your legislators are and you don't have them in your cell phone on speed dial, now is the time to do this. Tony mentioned the My Voter page website from the Secretary of State's office. And again, it's very simple. There are a ton of things that you can do at this site. And it's very simple to log in and check your status. We know, heaven forbid, that voter purging is going on throughout the nation and in Georgia. So make sure you are currently registered to vote. First initial, last name, your county from a drop-down menu, and your date of birth. And if you are me, then you will see where you live, what your voter status is, etc. And you can change your voter information if you need to. This website also gives you your polling place, directions, early voting locations and times, etc. And then if you need an absentee ballot or you filed one and you want to check your status, you can do that here. And then most importantly, there are links to who all your elective officials are, from the US Congress down to your school board. So this is a nice little resource here to find out who these individuals are. And if you happen to live in B. Wynn's district, you would click on her profile at the Georgia General Assembly, and it would give you information including her Capitol address, her email, her district address if she had one, and her staff member. And we'll talk about staff members in just a second. But it also gives you additional information. We now know when B's birthday is, and if we clicked on the other tabs, we'd see what House committee she's on, what legislation she sponsored, and then any press releases that she has released. Another website that we often recommend to find out this information is one called, excuse me, Open States. And this is very simple to find. Just Google Open States and you'll get to the website, and then you just put in your address to find your legislators. And again, if you're me, it'll tell you who in the state first is in the lower chamber, the House of Representatives, and then the upper chamber. And you'll notice here, again, there are links to their names. So that'll take you directly to their web pages in the General Assembly. And then also your federal individuals. So again, a nice website for finding information. And when I clicked on Houston Gaines, again, it brings you up an email, a website in the House, a district office, capital office, etc. And yes, I do live in Athens, Georgia, home of the national champion football team. Moving right along, lobbying do's and don'ts. How do you lobby? We know at this point in time, we have a ton of things to talk about. Thanks to what has been shared this morning, we know that there are some egregious bits of legislation floating their ugly heads, and we need to go through, and we now know what we're lobbying on. Let's talk about how we lobby. And I usually do this through the 5 C's of lobbying, because that's a mnemonic that helps me remember that the first one is to be courteous. We're in the South, catching more flies with honey than with vinegar. And when you are courteous, I think most of us would realize that we need to be courteous and not argumentative with our elected officials. But the number one person that you need to be courteous beyond that with is the staffers, the administrative assistants who are working for the legislators, for your elected officials. These individuals are the gatekeepers a lot of the time to whether or not you will get any kind of traction with the elected official. We know in public education that being courteous to the school secretary and the custodian are at the top of the list. The same thing happens here. We want to go through and be courteous to everyone who's involved. This is about issues that affect public education and retirement, and not about personalities. The next C is constituency-based concerns. No one can argue that your truth, your story is your story, is your truth. You can't go through and tell somebody, oh, you're lying about the fact of how the GPO WEP affects your life. No, I mean, it's your story. And so when you're talking with an elected official, you want to make sure that they realize that you are a voter. You are one of their constituents, and that you are sharing what has happened concerning the legislation, the proposed legislation, as part of your life, your truth. The next one is you have to be correct. You can't make up stuff. Now, does that mean you have to know everything? It does not. But it does mean that if you say, oh, I'm sorry, I don't know that answer. Would you like me to get back with you the information, that you are correct in going through and following up? So don't be intimidated about thinking, I can't possibly do this. I don't know you don't have to know everything. But if you'll know 2 or 3 facts about each proposed piece of legislation, or the piece of legislation you're lobbying on, then that'll help in showing the legislator, the elected official, that you've done your backgrounding work. And those of us on the legislative contact team, GAE is doing an excellent job this session, putting out talking points about some of these egregious pieces that are rearing their ugly head. The next C of the 5 C's of lobbying is that you have to be concise. Back in the day when we were in the Capitol and we were literally working the ropes and calling our legislator out of session, they're getting paid. They are elected to be in their chamber, listening to the debate, speaking on the debate, and voting. So when we are literally in the halls of the Capitol, going through and calling a legislator out to speak to that person, if you get 120 seconds sometimes, that's a gracious plenty. So you need to be telling your story in a very succinct manner. And even in these COVID times, if you are talking to someone on the phone, in a Zoom, etc., these individuals are very busy, as we've tried to show today, in honoring the elected officials' time, and being concise is a good thing. And the last one is always a little bit difficult for me, because I just forget to ask about what the legislator's opinion is, how they're going to vote on a piece of legislation. So this is the close. Representative Nguyen, can I count on you to vote in favor of blah? Senator Cowser, can I count on you to oppose? What are you going to do on this Senate bill? And the rationale for asking for the close is, if we know that the legislator is with us in our camp, then you can use the rest of your lobbying time and energy and move on to someone else you might be able to sway. By the same token, if someone has dug in his, their, her heels, literally and figuratively, and is so entrenched in their position that they are not even open to hearing anything, then again, use your time and your energy more wisely and move on to someone who might be swayed, who is listening, who wants to hear your story. And lastly, we've gone through the 5 C's, just the fine tuning of talking to elected officials. The first one is to thank them. We all like to be thanked for what is we are doing. And so offering oneself from a public service is huge. So the thank you is a good way to start out. And even if you don't agree with the elected official's viewpoint, you can thank that person for serving as an elected official. Second, fine tuning, introduce yourself so that the person knows who you are. And then, whom do you represent? Yes, you're a constituent. Do you represent the retired members of the Georgia Association of Educators? Are you one of the oldest teachers unions in the state? Have you taught for 29 years? So give yourself a little bit, and give the elected official a little bit of information of who you are and why you are knowledgeable about what you're about to say. And then you do go through and state what your position is, what the facts are. And then again, lastly, what is the elected official's position? Yes or no? Are they on the fence, etc.? And again, obviously closing out, thanking them for their time. So I thank you for your time today, for being a GAE and or GAE retired member and being part of this GAE Retired Day at the Capitol. Thank you, Linda.
You're so welcome, Karen. It doesn't appear, but the reality is we're going to meet again. While Karen and the rest of us are going through this, we've got to invite more people to the conversation of getting involved, so they will know how important it is to join in with family, friends, and our relationships, because it's not just a battle for GAE, it's a battle for all of Georgia and the nation. At this time, any questions for Karen? Great job. We are so right on time. And that brings us to Miss Debbie Simons. Still one of the most beautiful heads of hair I've ever seen. That's what inspired me some years ago about Debbie, is that she's always had that persona of being on point. And not just because of hair. When she opens her mouth, it's the truth. So Debbie, thank you so much for all you've done for us. And we just know that GAE wouldn't be where it is today without your service as president, of course, and then as member. Debbie?
Well, thank you, Linda. You're very kind, and we have gone back and forth on my hair and your head wraps, which I have always admired and respected, and like I said, admired. For those of you that don't know, I'm going to give you about a minute. I am a retired teacher from Gwinnett County, taught 32 years here in Georgia, another 2 years in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and 2 years in Texas prior to moving here to Georgia in 1981. I got a call just a year after I was retired from then President Calvin Robbins, who wanted to nominate me to the open position of the trustee that represents retired teachers in the state of Georgia. I quickly accepted and went through a very long interview process. I was investigated by the GBI as well as a forensic fiscal background. And then the board elected me to be that representative to the teacher retirement system. It is a re-electable position. There are no term limits. I guess my brain will limit me out at some point in time, but those are 3-year positions. I was just re-elected by the board last May, so I have another 2.5 years to serve on this term. Like you all, I have been intensely interested, especially after I retired, in the retirement system. I have, to that point, not had a lot of experience in that, so I endeavored, like you all have, to seek education. One of the groups that has been very important in my training has been the NEA. And we have 2 national pension specialists, Jim Kane and Michael Hairston. Like Todd is for GAE-Retired, Jim and Michael are to me what and other NEA trustees are to keep us, on point and when we ask questions and like that. The other group is the National Council on Teacher Retirement. That is like to what Georgia Teacher Retirement is. That's our national organization, like NEA is the national organization for GAE. So all the pension funds from all around the United States all belong to NCTR. And during that training, as we looked at it, I've learned a great deal about the national perspective. For the most part, the vast majority of educator teacher pension funds are still defined benefit programs, or at least a majority thereof. What defined benefit means is that you and I don't have to worry about what happens to the market day to day. Thank the heavens on that one. We have a confirmed commitment on what our pension is going to be from month to month to year for the rest of our lives. And that has been so important as we all look at the not only the security of our financial situation, but also the very fact that we can retire and remain in retirement in a state of dignity, which each and every one of us should have. The funds on a national level that you hear about and our detractors, the Arnold Foundation and the Reason Foundation, which by the by have tried a number of times, the Reason Foundation has, to get into the state of Georgia, and they have not been successful. They have found 1 or 2 members of our House of Representatives that are sympathetic to them, but fortunately they are not the leaders, and our leaders do not have anything to do with them. But there have been 3 major areas, as I have seen, that have caused teacher pension funds to fall into mismanagement or to states of not being able to fund their retirement system. The first one is that the state did not fund the ARC. Now, the ARC is the actuarially determined contribution for the pension fund. The state of Georgia has funded, fully funded, not a lick and a promise, but fully funded our pension fund every year as determined actuarially since 1945. Folks, that is huge. As you talk to your legislators, one of the things that you may want to do is thank them for their support of your and our pension fund, because that is the very basis that makes us fiscally sound. The other thing that has caused some funds on the national level to run into difficulties is making unwise investment decisions or overrating certain asset classes. There was a tendency there for a while to highly invest 40 to 50% of a fund's investments in alternatives. Georgia has never done that. We do have a law before us that allows us to invest up to 5%. We only invest at this point into a 1.5% of our funds. And that report is available at the TRS website if you wanted to look at that in greater depth. The third area that has caused difficulties for pension funds is if they have overextended their ability to offer benefits. Georgia has not done that. And we have been very conservative in our benefit structure, but we've also been very generous in a lot of ways. This is why Georgia has never gotten into a 25-year and out in our pension fund for retirement. It is not a fiscally sound philosophy to follow. That's why it has not. But we have other benefits that we are able to support, one of which is our COLA. It is the best COLA that I know of in the whole United States because it's a 1.5% compounding. And a part of the reason, or probably the majority reason, is because it is pre-funded. That means that the teachers of Georgia, in our consistent contribution of 6% a year of our salary, as well as we figure it in every year in our actuarial assessment for the employer to pay. So all of our COLAs for now and in the future are figured into the contribution basis. So the three reasons that funds find themselves in trouble is if they have not been fully funded by their state legislators, if they have made too risky of investments decisions, or if they have extended their benefits beyond the actuarially sound commitments. There is an organization that GAE and NCTR also belong to. This is NIRS, the National Institute on Retirement Security. They have on their website, and Karen, maybe if you can help me type this into the chat while I'm talking, their website is nirsonline.org. That's nirsonline.org. On their webpage, and this is open for everybody to go into, is a 45-minute video conference or a webinar called A Better Bang for the Buck 3.0. NIRS has done an extensive investigation on defined benefit plans and compares them to defined contribution plans, which are based on like a 401k. If you want to further your education on the difference between a defined benefit, DB program, and a defined contribution, DC program, I would like to highly encourage you to go and listen to that webinar and educate yourself in that. It's a free webinar. It is, again, an organization that is supported by GAE and NCTR as our research arm of our organization. Those are the basic facts of what's going on the national level, as well as I'm very proud to be a part of a very fiscally conservative but very progressive fund here in the state of Georgia. There are, as you know, we had at the end of December, $105 billion that has been held in the trust. And what that means is that money is not available for our legislators or our governor to put their hands in our pockets. They can't. It's held in trust. It's a very large fund in comparison to many things. But the issue is that we have 140,000 retirees and another 240,000 active members in our organization. One of the interesting things that I find, and is a part of my education, and I will always bring you all along and up to date, is one of the differences that's happening now in the state of Georgia is that we are becoming what we refer to as a maturing fund. Now, what that means is when I joined the teaching ranks back in 1981, there were 3 active teachers for every 1 retiree. Now, in 2022, we have 1.6 active members to every 1 retiree. So that's something to be expected. Our retiring members are growing. The number of active educators contributing are coming down some. I don't know what's going to happen as we go along and continue to have the teacher shortage. That's likely to have an impact, which is one of the reasons why the return to work bill is so important for us here in the state of Georgia. What is happening is that if local superintendents and local school boards continue to hire full-time retired teachers, that's great for the children of the state of Georgia. Here we have all these wonderful educators that are going to be to support our children in the kind of way that we want them to be educated. But it could potentially, over a period of time, reduce the amount of fund coming into the pension system to do that support of active to retired. What this bill is going to allow and require is that for every retired teacher that is hired back into the classroom, the employer must pay the employee and the employer contribution into the pension system so that we are held harmless and we can continue on in our fiscally and actuarially sound system. So that is another reason to support this bill. As Joe mentioned earlier, there was an amendment that was added to it in the House that was a surprise to us, was that it had to have a 30-year requirement. I don't know how the Senate is going to treat that. I think it is a watering down of the bill. I do believe that we are leaving out large groups of potential retirees, not only those that came in to the profession as a second profession, but also the number of military individuals that are doing the same thing. I don't think they're already, if they came in and retired after 15 years, their benefit, their entire pension is reduced already. So I'm not real sure why somebody would, I don't know how you'd game the system. I think it's being put out there that they want people to stay as long as they can. But again, if you're in a second career and you're 65, it's probably time for you to go ahead and think about retiring and then just work a year to year to see how things work out for you, as well as, whatever system that you're teaching in. So it's not a deal breaker, but it's not positive. It's not positive. We would like to see that removed from the language in the Senate, and perhaps that can be. those are the very specific things that I was requested to discuss. And I see that I too have reached the time that I believe, well, no, actually I'm a little short, but I came on early. So Linda, I don't know if you want to open this up for questions. If there are specific things that members that are here would like to ask me, I am willing
Yes,
to.
we have time. Are there any questions for Debbie? You can raise your hand. Cool. Did I see a hand?
I see Karen.
Okay, Karen.
So Debbie, do you think at all on this 30 years for this return to work bill that there'll be any movement, and this is kind of also for Joe and Lisa and anybody else who's listening, to amend the bill and add that someone who has reached full retirement age that would allow, as you're talking about, the exceptionalities and people who have expertise to return to work?
My knowledge of what's happened so far is that addition that happened on the House side happened so quickly, we didn't have time to respond to it. We being Dr. Evans giving further information to the maker of the bill. That did not come from the maker of the bill, that came from another individual. And they were so interested in getting it passed that I don't think they thought it through. What we are, excuse me, what I know that Dr. Evans is doing is taking some time with a couple of members in the Senate to give a further facts let them to think through if this is really where they want to go with this bill. Because if they truly want to have an impact, a positive impact on the children of the state of Georgia, this exclusionary factor would appear to be quite arbitrary and really, once thought out, does not flow with the real intent of the bill. That's all I can say. And I would just offer caution. I would not want the bill to die, but it certainly could be a lot more positive for the children of Georgia if this exclusion were taken out and just said, you know, I mean, retirement age, maybe, 62, 65. The average retirement, the average age of retirement in the state of Georgia is 59. And with 27 full-time service credits. Now, that doesn't include, buying back, well, that does not include sick leave, as somebody might add on. So I think if they really looked at who the retirees were in the state of Georgia, even if you just made it what the average exclusionary factors were, or the average factors were, 59, 27 years. I mean, there's ways to work with this, but that number of years of service, I think I really find it quite arbitrary. And I don't think it's, like I said, a positive thing for the children of Georgia. And that's the way I feel about it.
Any other questions? Lisa?
Linda, if I can say, I did speak with the bill sponsor about this, and he is quite willing, if they change it on the Senate side, that there would be no objection on the House side. He said the one thing that he would not budge on, and we will completely agree with him on this, was that he wanted these people who were returning to be returning to the classroom,
right,
and not in other positions. And right, we agree with him there. So I think the 30 years was added in because they looked and they know that our retirement system, 30 years is full retirement.
Right.
And so they said, oh, we'll just say 30 years, and didn't consider the fact that most people don't teach the full 30 years.
And there was some discussion around that in the fact that they didn't want people to retire early because this was a benefit, but we're not seeing that now. And I think it was one step too far. Again, I don't think they thought it through. Like you said, we had contact with, TRS had contact with the sponsor of the bill as well as the supporters, and they all went, oh, okay. So they have no objections to changing it back to what it was originally. And I think it can be done on the Senate side. Because you've got many friends out there, Lisa, that are also talking with that. And you and Joe can also, talk with Dr. Evans. He's had several one-on-one conversations with individuals. So we'll see how it goes. I don't know when that's going to come up on the Senate agenda. Do you have any idea?
Joe just put a note in the chat that Senate retirement is not meeting this week.
Right.
So it won't be this week.
Yeah.
Oh, good. One good thing I think is that it is an election year, and that carries some weight. But what troubles me is just the classroom. So that doesn't mean counselors or those extra support people in this bill, correct?
Right. The bill is specifically teachers, and it's not every teacher able to return. It has to be in the high need areas as defined by the RESA in the area. So this is about where you need a science teacher in the high school and you don't have one.
Well, and even more than that, I know that I've talked with my friends down in Albany, and they're having a particularly difficult time with elementary school. Right. So it's, we all tend to think, especially I guess in the metro area, which I spent my career, about the math, science, special ed. But when you get out, and that's why it was divided out into the RESAs, because in our rural areas, there are different needs and different critical areas. And this is the first bill I have ever seen that really tried to hone in on the needs of our, different sections of our state. And that's one of the valuable components of this, is it does take that in. And the other one is, like Lisa said, we're not talking about hiring an administrator back. We love those people, but we have a lot of people that'll fill those positions right out of the classroom. And then that leaves the vacancy in the classroom. So it focuses on classroom. It focuses on the needs of the different regions. It's very good for the children of Georgia.
Patrick, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Linda. Lisa, can you put the names of the people on this Senate retirement, so that, because the best way we can reach them is to tell our story. Because like in my case, I moved to Georgia when, and so I was only allowed to teach 15 years and got 16 with my extra years not using there. But when you start telling the story, if I want to live here the rest of my life, why can't I go back in the classroom and do that? So I think by telling our stories, we're better able to get them to understand why they need to change the bill back. That makes sense.
It does. As we've just explained, the General Assembly definitely will have that committee on their website. But Joe can provide it what we can just email that information out to people that are on the Zoom, so they can do any work that they want to do individually. Just remember those 5 C's and make sure that it's your testimony and that you're accurate. However, the GAE is there for any information that you need. My question, I guess to maybe Lisa, is that, okay, it's not me, but some 30-year teacher has decided that they want to go back to the classroom. Where should they start?
I think they're going to start with their local system, and then I think the local system reports that to teacher retirement system that they are hiring a retiree.
Okay, so interview retirees out there. Know any retirees that want to go back? I didn't say brave enough to go back because I think I'm done, but who knows? Let them know that GAE is there for any questions that they might have. Thank you, Debbie, so much for that United States perspective of what's going on. That part we don't usually hear enough in terms of how blessed we are in that we have TRS who've been looking out for teachers for quite some time. So thank you very much. It feels good to know that for life, I'm good as long as we stay vigilant and monitor what's going on with TRS. Thank you so much. Now, I never told her this, but I call her a bean counter. Her name is Grace Akins, because what she will come with are numbers and how those numbers reflect the individuals in terms of who are making laws and who votes and all of that kind of stuff. So Grace, if you would introduce yourself first. She's a GAE lobbyist, and it's on you, dear.
Thanks, Linda. I am not the most, I don't excel in numbers, to be honest, but I appreciate the description, the introduction. So, you know, we all know each other here, friendly faces. My name is Grace Akins. I guess my title is state campaign director, but I work to support Joe at the Capitol and with campaigns and elections. And I have been tasked with talking about data-driven communication, the vital link to effective legislative results. So I think I'm not going to belabor the point home, but just off the heels of that conversation about the conversation of Senate retirement and this bill that doesn't take into account the realities of teachers either coming into the profession or when they leave the profession. But ultimately, lawmakers desperately need to hear from you because, you know, bills like that and bills that sometimes don't make sense or are not thought out or are simply poorly written, it's because they're not talking to educators like y'all. They don't know the ins and outs like y'all do. They aren't experts in the issue, and so they need to hear from you. I think one of the many tools that we use, I know that y'all are excited about Hustle because it's a great way to text fellow retired members into action. And so, you know, that's something that we've used with GPO WEP to contact our Congress members and get them to sign on to the bill that would put fairness into Social Security. We also have on the GAE.org/campaigns website another take action button for stopping the most recent vouchers, HB 60. So I will put that in the chat, GAE.org/campaigns. That's going to be the running page that we use for a lot of these action alerts. You'll also receive emails and texts as well. Before I get into some of the, I guess, data, I also want to encourage y'all as retireds to either talk to your fellow retired countrymen or talk to yourselves in the mirror and think about running for office, because the other thing that we're missing here is legislators who understand the plight of educators. We need more educators representing in the Georgia General Assembly. With the attacks on public education happening right now, especially in this election year, you know, Georgia is one of those states where people don't quite understand until they get to the state how things operate. But I like to think, or I don't like to think, unfortunately, what seems to be the case is whenever the General Assembly meets, it's the most dangerous time of the year for public education. So with that said, we do need representatives of education, of public education, in office protecting public education. And so I want to encourage you all to run for office or think about it or talk to your fellow retireds. You're in a great position to do so. You have the time, you have the experience. It's really just a matter of getting that grassroots organizing around you to support you and getting the vote out. All right, so now data. So we have, I'm just gonna pull up some numbers for the most recent action that we've taken. Last year with HB 60 and SB 47 vouchers, we sent out a total of 12,000, around thereabouts 12,000 letters, or excuse me, 1,200, excuse me. I wish it was 12,000, but it was 1,200 letters to lawmakers in the State House and State Senate. I would like to double that this year. I would like us to get to over 2,000. Right now, we're at 200 for letters sent to lawmakers. And as y'all know, it's really quick, 2 clicks, that's it. You can go again to gae.org/campaigns and send that letter if you haven't already within 2 clicks. But if you can share it with your friends, family, other educators, whoever you think is interested in preserving public education, and that's pretty much 95% of the state of Georgia, please share it with them so that we can get the word out to stop these vouchers. I'd like, again, to get us up to at least 2,000. For GPO WEP, we have sent a total of, so only 100 letters have been sent for GPO WEP. So we could probably increase that number as well. If you haven't already heard about the GPO WEP Take Action Alert, basically it's a letter to your lawmakers, or excuse me, to your congressman or woman to sign on to the Social Security Fairness Act. At this point, I believe we have 8 representatives who have signed on in the state of Georgia, but there's still room for more. Karen, do you want to correct me on that one?
Only 4 have signed.
Only 4?
4 of our 14 reps have signed on. Shameful.
That's disappointing. I thought David Scott had signed on and Nikema Williams had also signed on as well. Is that right?
That is true. David Scott is just not listed on the website yet where we track this legislation.
Okay, so it's even with him, it's still just 4?
With him, it would be 5.
Okay.
5 out of 14.
Okay, that's still very shameful, and you're right. We need to fix that. And then for if you have, we'll probably send out another round of hustles next week, assuming. I mean, we'll see what happens this week with HB 60 vouchers. You know, there's also this attacks on censorship in education. We're going to be sending texts about that as well, and you'll also be receiving emails. So the other last thing I want to share is just that if you can just talk to 1 to 3 other members about making sure that their information is updated. That means their cell phone, their email, so that we have the contact info that we need to get them the communications that they need to take action. That's the only thing I would ask, is if we multiply for the point that I have. If y'all have questions, feel free to ask. And thank you.
Thank you, Grace, for that information. We've got to get more involved. If you go to the chat, you will see that Karen has placed a message that you need to go, if you're not being hustled, you're getting information through a text message, you need to go to My NEA 360 and update your profile information to make sure that your telephone number is current. I did that last week, and I have been getting hustled since then. So thank you, Grace, for everything, your energy and your expertise. At this time, I think it is so timely that we have Judy Polachek, who will give an overview of GPO WEP and to let NEA know that we're on point. And we would like to think that because of GAE and GAE-Retired communicating with those representatives that we have gotten all of the Democrats, I think, to sign on. We're still working with a couple, and we should get with them very soon, like this week. But we've got to continue to address it where it needs to be addressed. Not surprising, the Republicans all have not signed on. So we need to contact them with our personal testimonies. And we commit ourselves to revisit that and to contact them again. So Judy, Vice President of ODE Retired and on the Legislative Committee.
Yes, hello, everybody. I am going to go through this PowerPoint very quickly because there are a lot of current issues that I think are important for us to discuss. So next. Okay, for those of you that don't know, this is how you earn your Social Security credits. You need 40 credits in order to be eligible for Social Security benefits. And you earn a maximum of 4 credits a year. So obviously for all of us educators, you need to work 10 years in order to be eligible for Social Security. However, that's when the shock occurs. Next. And the GPO and the WEP are what I'm going to be talking about next. The GPO, the government pension offset, affects spouses. And the windfall elimination provision affects you, the worker. Next, our wonderful capital. Next. Okay. I was really shocked when I found this out. On the map of the United States, the blue states are the only states where teachers are covered by Social Security. The red states are the states where they are not covered by Social Security. And the blue states vary by school district, Georgia being the example. I worked in DeKalb County. We were not covered by Social Security. I believe it was in the 1970s that DeKalb opted out of Social Security. And I'm trying to think, let's see, Gwinnett is not in Social Security.
Jefferson City and Oconee County are not in Social Security.
Okay, Marietta City, City of Atlanta, Clayton and Fulton County, they are not in Social Security. And
also Harris County, Judy.
Okay, well, we were in the process of collecting the names of the counties, so I don't have everyone. But next, you're going to be shocked. Okay. What I'm going to be talking about actually affects all of these public sector jobs because they may not be under Social Security. Next. Okay. The WEP affects 1.9 million people across the United States. Next. And there are over 700,000 people affected by the GPO. Next. Okay, I'm going to skip through this. These bills, the windfall elimination provision was passed in 1983 under Ronald Reagan. Next. And this is just a picture of what you should look for on your W-2 statements to see if you are covered. And in DeKalb County, there will be a blank under Social Security. And what I didn't realize, I started working full-time in DeKalb County in November of 1985. And at that time, DeKalb was not paying Medicare into Medicare wages and tips. They apparently started paying in the spring of '86, but I was what they called grandfathered in to not paying. And so I didn't realize what that meant until I retired. I received my Medicare on my husband's Social Security, but I also pay more for it. So for those of you that don't know why all of this is happening with Medicare, if you have any of your old W-2s, look and see. Next. And I'm going to pass through this next. The government pension offset, which is the one that really, really affects me, was passed in 1977 under Jimmy Carter. Next. Next. This just gives you a quick glimpse of somebody that should be receiving spousal benefits off of her husband's Social Security. Will at the end of the GPO reduction will actually only wind up receiving $200 a month if she's lucky. But I'm going to talk about that more in a little while. Next.
Judy,
Next.
Okay. Do you not want me to show the video?
I did not know there was a video.
Okay. Do you want?
Yes. Okay.
It's about 2 minutes. This video
Okay.
Is from the Texas retirement system, one of those red states that Social Security is not taken out of. And so it refers to TRS, but even though it's saying TRS for Texas retirement system, it the information is applicable to those systems in Georgia who also are not taking out Social Security. Here we go.
Thank you, Karen.
Yep.
Meet Kim. Kim is an assistant principal at a middle school. She's been a TRS member for 12 years. Before becoming an educator, Kim worked as a public librarian for 11 years. While working for the city, Kim paid into the Social Security system. Since she began working for her school district, Kim has not paid into Social Security. Like most Texas school districts, her district does not participate in Social Security. That means Kim is only eligible for Social Security benefits based on her previous employment with the city and through her spouse, who has paid into Social Security for his entire career. Kim is currently reading up on 2 Social Security provisions that could reduce or even eliminate her Social Security benefits. The Windfall Elimination Provision, also known as WEP or WEP, and the Government Pension Offset, or GPO. Because Kim will receive a TRS pension for employment in which she did not pay Social Security taxes, the Social Security benefits she earned from her previous employment could be reduced by the WEP but not totally eliminated. The amount of the reduction depends on the amount of her earnings and the number of years she paid Social Security taxes. The GPO, however, could offset or even eliminate Kim's spousal benefits if she retires from her current employer. The GPO will reduce her spousal Social Security benefits by 2/3 of her TRS pension. If 2/3 of Kim's TRS pension exceeds the amount of her spousal benefits from Social Security, she will not receive a spouse or widow's Social Security benefit. If you or your spouse has paid into the Social Security system, contact a Social Security representative to determine if the WEP or GPO apply to you. Ask if there are any exceptions to the GPO that could eliminate the offset to your spousal benefits. Be prepared to balance out the potential effects of these provisions with personal savings when you retire.
Okay, next. I'm going to skip this. Next. Next. Yes, all of this is going to be affecting you. Next. And I'm going to be talking about this at length in a few minutes. Next. Yes, next. It absolutely does. And that's, again, I'll be talking about that next. Yes, yes, yes. Next. Next. Okay, there are, I have recently found out that there are people all over the country that are working very hard to repeal GPO and WEP. Next. We have HR 82, the Social Security Fairness Act of 2021. And the sponsor of that is Rodney Davis from Illinois. And again, I'm going to go into that in detail in a few minutes. There is also another bill, another resolution, HR 5723, and that's Representative Larson from Connecticut. So far, HR 82 that Grace was talking about a few minutes ago, we only in Georgia have 5 representatives that are co-sponsoring it, which is really pathetic. We don't have I'm sorry, we don't have David Scott's name on this list, but if you'll notice, it is a bipartisan list. Jody Heiss is co-sponsoring it. And there are many Republicans across the country that are co-sponsoring it. And personally, I think one of the reasons is that they know that their families are being affected by these bills. Their parents are being affected by these bills. So I like to think a little positively about it, that that's why they're doing it, that it's just not out of the goodness of their hearts. On the numbers, we have I'm sorry, I had all of this written down. Okay, we need 290 co-sponsors in the House to vote and pass this bill. Right now, we have 248, which is the closest that we've ever been. So we need 42 more. And if you think about that, across the whole country, we should be able to get 42 if we work. And one of the ways that we're doing it is there is a national repeal period in February, from February 14th to February 25th. And there, hopefully we can get different organizations across the country. Hopefully we can get GAE and GAE-Retired to become really active in this repeal task force. And I'm going to ask Grace if we can send out a hustle to encourage our members to write our remaining representatives that are not co-sponsoring it, to get them to sponsor it. So you hopefully will be receiving something from Grace very soon. If and when you do contact your representative, it's really, really important that you explain to them why you are being affected. Give them your personal story. And I will tell you a little bit about mine. When I worked under Social Security, I believe I had 36 quarters. So I didn't earn enough to get Social Security on my own. I have it on my husband's, who worked about 60 years under Social Security, paid in all of those years. And he passed away 2.5 years ago. I retired as a paraprofessional. So if any of you are ESPs, you know that paraprofessionals didn't earn all that much. So my TRS amount is not anywhere near certifieds. And even though I knew about GPO and WEP, I was really shocked when I went to Social Security to find out what I would be receiving as a spouse. It's a very small amount from my husband's because I have a pension. Even though it's not a huge pension, it is a pension, and by their determination, I receive, it is less than 1/3 of what I should be receiving. And then the real kicker, and this just bothers me every year, TRS gives us a COLA. I'm required to report that COLA to Social Security, and they in turn reduce my small Social Security amount by just about the amount of my COLA. So I believe my last COLA was somewhere around $25 a month. So they will cut that and I might receive $5 a month. So they don't allow us to really get ahead. And the women are affected the most, and lower income people are affected the most. So we really, really need to fight. And no matter what they say, this has been paid for. Money has been paid into Social Security. My husband paid into my Social Security. For those of you that are affected by WEP, you have been paying in Social Security. So it's not, this is our money. And we need to fight for it. And if you put your email in the chat, I can send you letters for you to copy and send to your representatives and your senators, not just your representatives. Because if we can get this passed through the House, then we need to work on the Senate. So it's really important that we do this. And those of you affected by GPO, it can eliminate up to $24,000 or more a year from your benefits. I mean, think about that. It's pretty mind-boggling. So are there any questions?
Patrick has his hand up, but before Patrick ask you, before you ask your question, Patrick, I do know that Lisa is working on this from a state, perspective, because we know that those that are near retirement definitely need to know. And I do know that something is in the works on that. So Lisa might want to speak to that a little bit later. The time is now 11:31 and we're in good time. Patrick, your question?
Actually, it's a statement, it's two statements. I want people to be aware, if you are on, have Social Security taken out, or you've worked Social Security before you came to a state that does not take out Social Security, you will get statements periodically about what your benefits will be from Social Security. Don't believe them. Because I am affected by windfall WP, GPO. I worked in Alabama full-time for 10 years, paid all Social Security. I worked as a teacher. They took that out. I worked part-time in Mobile along with taking out this. I moved to Atlanta. They do not. I worked 7 summers and holidays whenever I come back to Mobile to work for Alice 5 and 10, a little store that I love dearly. And when I got ready to retire, they slapped me with minus $200. Now, by the time they take out taxes and my Medicare, with the raise I just got, I take home $425. That's not very much money on Social Security. Had I been in a private company, I would be taking home $600. Almost $700, $675. So people be aware of that. Just because you might know someone that gets those statements, if they're not working with the system that takes out Social Security, tell them don't believe them, call, because before you retire, if you work 5 years full-time before you apply for Social Security, if you have this money, you can get full retirement. There are ways to be around it, but I would suggest that you definitely check it out, because I don't want you to be in a position like Judy and I are in. It's not fair. They passed this thing that it is double dipping, and if you think about me, I got Alabama retirement Georgia Retirement, and Social Security. All three of those are three different pots of money. I'm not double dipping. I'm not triple dipping. They're coming out three different pots that we paid into. So
Okay,
that's
Pat.
what people have to look in. Thank you.
Okay, Patrice Ernest, you have your hand up.
Thank you so much. And I really appreciate the invitation to be a visitor on this such important group. My husband is actually, or was actually, under the Teachers Retirement System of Georgia, and I have learned so much here today. I just want to share with y'all that I have been a member of the National Task Force to repeal the WEP and the GPO, and I was very concerned when this group didn't have the Georgia representation that I thought that it needed. And a email to Tony Smith brought about the last participation of the of your organization to the national group. And I can't be more proud of the work that you are doing. We're going to get this done. We are going to make sure that the WEP and the GPO are repealed because it's the right thing to do. So I just have to say thank you to Ms. Brooks, Ms. Smith, Ms. Solheim, and Polachek, and Ms. Smith for their participation. And I really am on board with everything you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrice. And I know I really appreciate meeting you and your invitation to the meeting yesterday. It was a real eye-opener because when I remember back in the 90s at NEARAs, they used to really push this fact that the WEP and the GPO were happening, just to try and educate people before they retired. And then it seemed as though we weren't hearing much about it.
And we need to, because there are over 52,000 Georgians affected by the WEP and over 20,000 affected by the GPO. Georgia ranks 8th in the states for those affected by the WEP and 9th in the states of those affected by the GPO. So a lot of work to do.
Well, and I think Linda's really going to jump in because she has a connection with the NEA-Retired board. And any of us that are retired need to let NEA know that this isn't something that we want them to kind of sit back on. We need to be active. Linda, you look like you want to add something.
Yeah, Julie Harwin, who is on the NEA board representing retired, was on the meeting yesterday. And I'm sure if anyone can send a message, I know Julie will, as well as Tony, again, communicating with Sarah that we're here and we're working and we've got to get this done. I agree. That's not, well, it seems like a small number to reach, but I know with work we can. I think I misspoke when I said no Republicans. I see that Karen's representative, Jody Heiss,
right,
Mr. Just having a field trip on January 6th, has signed it. So maybe he can convince some of his retirement, Republican cohorts to come on and sign. I think that's how we did it with the letters that we mailed, along with Judy continually calling Hank Johnson and then Nakima. So I think it's awareness with the staff to place it a little bit higher in priority as they meet with the representatives. I did see another hand up, but I know, Lisa, I do know that GAE, our parent state organization, is working with this situation. Could you speak to what GAE is doing?
Yes, Linda. Yes, ma'am. So the GAE Board of Directors, it is in December, created a task force, and we are working on identifying members active and retired throughout the state so that we will have members in each of the 14 congressional districts serving on that task force. And then the task force will work, obviously, along with you as retired to, first, we need to educate our active members about this issue, because we have members working in school systems every day throughout the state who do not even know that this is an issue. And we have educators making the decisions about where they will apply to work without knowing that this is an issue. So the education piece has to happen as well, educating our members so they then understand why it's important that they do contact their congressman.
Thank you, Lisa. I also want to add that we didn't say this, but you probably know with TRS, all you need to do is call and make an appointment to speak with them status, as you know, you have some some friends that are reaching retirement age, and they have a new office now in Middle Georgia. So they have grown to service more members with any question. But once again, education is key. And that was
Go ahead.
Judy. No, go on.
Now, I was going to add that way back in the dark ages, when I started working in DeKalb in the mid 1800s, in the mid 1980s, I used to wonder why so many people would retire and go to work in the city of Decatur schools for a year and then officially retire. And it was because back then, if you worked under a system that was in Social Security for 1 year, you would be eligible for, I guess, the WEP. I'm not sure how it affected the GPO, but you would be eligible if you worked that 1 year. But several years ago, they changed that to 5 years. So now when you retire, and if you want to receive your WEP funds, you have to work for 5 years, which is a big difference.
Wow. Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone. We've reached the climax of our program. And I just want to say how important it is that we continue to do what we're doing, and that we will. At the closing of the program, we have something that all of you can participate, except if you've won a gift card before. Patrick, and who's the secretary of GAE-Retired, and Vivian Brooks, who's on the legislative committee, will handle our 2 door prizes. But before we do that, is it anyone else who'd like to make a remark or have anything to say about today's program? I have put my email address for those of you who want to volunteer. Know that you're already on our roster to help, and we will be getting back with you for some small duty that you might be able to do, making phone calls, helping updating the roster, whatever you can do, we'll be contacting you. But thanks so much for coming today. And Patrick and Vivian.
I guess I'll go first. All right, to win this gift card, I know several of you have been to the GAE boardroom. And on the walls, there are pictures on the wall. And of those pictures, 2 of those pictures do what NEA asks of their members: run for office. 2 of those people ran for state office and got elected on the state legislature. My thing is here, put it in the chat. Name one of them.
Patrick, should they put it in the chat to you or to everyone?
To everyone.
Thank you.
Gloria Jenkins, you have won. Horace Tate was one of them. He went on to be a state legislator. Huh?
Thank you.
And the other one was Faye Smith. and they both represented GAE very well in the state legislature.
What about Bill? Bill
Cummings.
Cummings?
Bill Cummings.
Oh, I didn't know about him. I'm sorry. But Gloria beat Debbie.
Probably served
I'm
longer
sorry,
than anybody
Debbie.
else.
You're good. Thank you. I learned something new today too. I'm sorry.
So that's Bill Cummings,
We had
Horace
three, but
Tate.
that's good.
Yeah, Bill Cummings, Horace Tate, and Faye Smith, all were GAE leaders. Vivian and Miss Gloria, we have your address. We'll get you a gift card in the mail.
Thank you so much.
Vivian Brooks.
Okay, the next question is, when does the Georgia legislative branch meet?
Wow, that was.
Okay, when does the Georgia Assembly meet? This was in the program.
We have a winner. Karen Soheim is the winner. Oh, is that the correct answer, Vivian?
That's the correct answer.
Okay, and she was the first to chime in. First Monday in January, second Monday in January. Second Monday in January for 40 days. Karen?
I'll relinquish my gift card. You can ask another question.
Okay. Another question?
Oliver James Robinson answered. Would you accept her answer?
Yes.
Great.
Well, that's not necessarily accurate because the 40 days have to be 40 days that both chambers are in session. So if they have a pandemic, I think they went on and
forever.
Yeah, they relinquished meeting for a while and then came back. And I think we were in session till June of last year or the year before. It all runs together.
Okay. Vivian, another question?
Okay, another question. Which governor grandson ran for governor? Which governor of the state of Georgia, his grandson ran for governor?
Jimmy Carter.
That's correct.
Sorry, Dan, you didn't put in the chat. Angeline.
Right.
Angeline Williams was the first to say Carter. Is that acceptable? And then Karen said Jimmy Carter. Vivian, I think Carter is acceptable. Only that the next winner has already relinquished one. I'm sure she would the other. And is that acceptable, Vivian?
Yes, that's acceptable.
Okay, welcome back, Angeline. It's been a long time. Thanks everyone for participating in that. Angeline, we have your address and we'll get your gift card in the mail as usual. Now, we can't close unless we let you know what else is going on. So Karen Soheim is the keeper of what we're doing. And with that, when she finishes, she will bid you adieu, as I will at this time, to thank you and look to hear from us in the near future about what else is going on with GAE-Retired. Thanks. Karen?
Yes, ma'am. Sorry, I now have hit all the wrong buttons. Let's try this one. So as I hope President Morgan alluded to, we do have the legislative contact team. And even if you are not a member yet, tune in on this coming Thursday at 6:30 virtually. Again, in the Loop magazine are all the links to these events. And as Joe Fleming alluded to, if you haven't signed up for GAE Day at the Capitol, you will want to do that. And just lastly, for retirees and for active members, all GAE members, We have our GAE Lunch Bunch is always the first Wednesday of the month. Again, we're doing everything by Zoom, 11:30 to 12:30, and we have a speaker talking about memory matters for the first Wednesday in March. So join us for all these GAE Retired events. Thank you so much for giving your time, your expertise, and your talent. And thank you for being a member of GAE and GAE Retired. I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you, Linda Wolf-Smith, and everyone else who was on the call and helped make this program the success it was this morning. Have a
Thank you,
great day.
guys. Be
Thank-
safe. Be safe. Wear your mask. Wash your hands. Social distance. Love you all.
Bye.
Bye.